Well, welcome to the second Brexit Party film during this crisis, examining issues and trying to shine some light on some very difficult, shaded areas. Now, fruit and veg picking. The season begins about now with polytunnels, and of course it goes right on through the autumn, finishing up with apple picking and other things. And we have very much relied on vast amounts of foreign labour coming into the country to do it. It's very interesting. In 2004, when Tony Blair unconditionally opened up our borders to 8 former communist countries, and they were then joined a couple of years later by Romania and Bulgaria, the argument went that if we didn't have unlimited amounts of Eastern European labour, that the strawberries would rot in the field and that the crop would not get brought in. And I remember at the time saying, well, hang on, we managed this before with seasonal workers, we managed it before with UK workers, but something very strange is going on because the season is starting now. We're told from the National Farmers Union they will need about 80,000 people. Now, it seemed to me, not only have a large number of people been furloughed, but a lot of people are losing their jobs, and a lot more, I've no doubt, as this lockdown continues, will lose their jobs. So it seemed to me, surely it's not difficult to get UK workers to plug the gaps. And we then got stories that huge numbers of UK applicants had applied. Quite a lot apparently had been refused. Others, we were told, once they'd found out the terms of the job, didn't want the jobs. And then we see the sight of aeroplanes being chartered from Romania to bring people in to pick crops. Now, is this a greedy farming industry? Is this those that are working to get labour? Are they making more money out of getting Eastern Europeans in? Or is it true that lots of Brits have applied because by doing so, they maintain their unemployment benefit, saying they tried for a job? Let's try and delve into this. It's complicated, but I think at the end of this, there will be a moral to the story. Now, firstly, I'm joined by Gwen Towler. Gwen, good afternoon. I understand that you applied for a job in fruit picking. Talk us through your story.
Yes, well, after the 21st of January and us finally managing to get the Brexit, well, sort of, maybe, we hope, that we're after, and being no surplus to requirements in the office, I felt, particularly when you heard the NFU call for the need for people to apply for jobs and their panic about fruit picking, that it was almost beholden on me to do so. I was having difficulty finding work. The COVID had started, it was getting harder and harder to find things. I thought, well, seeing as I'm partly responsible for the situation where tens of thousands of Eastern Europeans weren't going to be able to come into the country to do the fruit picking, it was certainly beholden on me to do something about it. And given Universal Credit has only so much cash in it, I worked out the numbers that if I worked even on minimum wage, even accepting the idea of staying in a caravan with 6 or 7 other people, I would, rather than sitting on my fat behind and receiving pretty much the benefit cap for my rent and all the rest of it, I could at least work, and I'd probably come home with about 150 to 200 quid a month on top of that which I'd be getting from benefits, which to my mind is preferable. I'm not one who's keen on just taking benefits. So I saw we need pickers, so I proceeded to apply. There was a push for.
Was that through an agency that you applied, or direct?
Well, initially, there's a website called British Summer Fruits, which has a map, because I'd put something out on Twitter and somebody had pointed me to this website, and there's a map of fruit farms up and down the country who are looking for workers, anything from the beginning of May through to the autumn. And that was from Scotland to Somerset, with particular pockets near Hereford and the Wye Valley, the asparagus farms, Early, Kent. A friend's son had managed to get himself a job in an asparagus farm, and he's now earning more than his father, who his company has just gone into free fall.
Yeah.
He's getting about.
Tell me, Gwen, I mean, just give us an idea. I mean, because we know it's backbreaking, damn hard work.
Yeah.
But what's he earning?
He's earning about 500 quid a week.
Yeah, which at the moment, for a lot of people, is a very, very attractive sum of money.
It sounds like better than I'm getting any other way.
Yeah.
So I then applied for about 15 firms from this website. The map marks them up. I received 2 rejections, personal rejections from the farms themselves, saying, sorry, we're all fully booked, and nothing else. I then started to see more and more comments from the industry saying that they couldn't get the workers.
Yes.
And so on the back of... so I thought, funny.
Isn't what we're seeing here spin from an industry that has become completely reliant on bringing in the cheapest labour it possibly can from Eastern Europe, accommodating them, charging them for the accommodation? And isn't that what we're really seeing here? Yes,
to an extent. I mean, one or two of the farms that I applied to pushed me in the direction of a Facebook page that was in Bulgarian and Romanian, and I could apply that way.
Useful.
And then you've got something called Feed the Nation, which is 3 large employing agencies where you click on there, you get through, you do a video interview. I've got, funnily enough, after I wrote an article in the Telegraph, I got the video interview. So I've done that. I'm waiting for a response now. But for people I know who've gone through all the hoops, they've had job offers that commit them to working through till late November, that ban them from having cars, driving to and from, so they have to live on site and thus pay the 52 quid. Now, you've got to remember, this 52 quid capped amount includes the various service charges. Now, the farmers are only taxed for the rent. So if they say the service charges are 50 quid a week and you get it rent-free, that's tax-free money.
Yeah.
And now, if you've got 300-400 people working on your farm, that adds up quite fast. Now, I don't know. Of course, I don't know. Mine is anecdotal. I don't know the broader picture, but it is clear to me that it is not being made simple. Oh, one of the other things is a suggestion that I should have a 3-week training course.
Good Lord.
Now,
unpaid, I suppose.
That wasn't specified, but a 3-week training course to pick vegetables. Now, I know it's hard work, but I can't believe the skill set required is any different from when I did this as a student.
Unbelievable. Gwen, thank you for that. Really interesting. I'll come back to you in a second. You see, it's very interesting. I'd never heard British politicians denigrate our own people until Tony Blair in 2004, who basically said, and I guess it's because they were covering up for the sheer numbers of people coming into the country, not just into the fruit and veg industry, but that was when the narrative started. British workers are lazy, useless, and won't do these jobs. And that narrative has continued right to the current day. I'm sure, I'm convinced there are young British people who are lazy, feckless, and useless, but there are also a heck of a lot of people out there who will work very, very hard and who right now, in many cases, are desperate. Yet still, we're getting a narrative in the last week that British people don't want to do these jobs. Gwen, I accept, is just one case. But many, many others who've said they've applied and it hasn't happened. Well, let's try and get some thought on this from the farming angle. Rupert Lowe joins me. Rupert is a farmer, though not a fruit and veg farmer, I don't think, Rupert.
No, I'm not a fruit and veg farmer, Nigel. I scratch a living on Cotswold brash with sheep, barley, and wheat and various other arable crops. No, but I'm not a veg or a fruit farmer.
Okay, we're not going to have a farmer crying poverty in this interview, I promise you, Rupert. What is going on, Rupert? I mean, have you heard of other cases like Gawain's where British people apply for jobs and find it very difficult, even though we're told there's a shortage?
Well, yes, I have, and I've spent some time trying to help 2 of my ex-constituents in the West Midlands who were looking to go and fruit pick in a similar way to Gawain. I think they felt, rather than just being furloughed, they wanted to go and do something which actually contributed to maybe a more seasonal sort of flavour to British eating, which hopefully will develop as a result of this.
True.
And they tried with almost all of the various agencies, and as Gawain said, most of it was an online process. It was very difficult. You were expected to do training. Quite what training you need in order to learn to cut a bit of asparagus, I'm not quite sure, but it can't be that extensive. So I think listening to their experiences, they were also going to be required to share a caravan, arguably in an overcrowded situation with other people, perhaps from Eastern Europe, who may or may not have complied with the quarantine rules which are required coming into the country. They certainly wouldn't have been social distancing sufficiently if they'd done that. I think looking at it without having an in-depth knowledge of it, and as you say, I think this is an area which needs to be closely looked at. And I think George Eustice should actually get his hands dirty and get in amongst it with this. But I think several things have come together here. Firstly, the supermarkets have been beating the farmers up for a very long time. So I don't think it's just a case of farmers being bad people, but they've been forced to make every penny count and their margins have been driven down and down and down by the monopolistic supermarket system. So I think they've become very used to having large quantities of seasonal workers coming in from these ex-communist countries who are becoming part of the EU. That has turned into some profit centres. So, for instance, running them with their caravans, they've had them on site. I understand a lot of them can't park their cars, so they've got them there when they need them. I think it's just a case of becoming convenient, quite cheap. These guys don't get paid very much in Poland, Romania, and other parts of the now European Union. So I think it needs to be closely looked at, because nothing, to my mind, grates more than hearing people saying that British people are lazy when they're doing their damnedest to get a job and finding hurdles are being put up, aspersions are being cast, and actually they're good people wanting to do an honest day's work. So I think the government, all the people in charge of this, particularly the Ministry of Agriculture, should be getting in amongst it and ensuring that those people who want to do a seasonal job on a British farm, and let's face it, we're in the early stages of our seasonal fruit and veg picking. Asparagus quite often doesn't actually come until early May. It's been reasonably early this year. But we will be revving up over the next 3 months to a very hectic picking regime. And we need to get this right now. We can't really wait. So somebody, I think, does need to take responsibility, get in amongst it, find out what is and isn't true, and change the way in which it's happening.
Yeah, I mean, Rupert, I do take your point about the supermarkets beating farmers down on price. I do take that point. I understand that point. But I guess, if your competitor next door uses European, Bulgarian, Romanian labour and has everyone living there, it kind of sets a standard across the industry, doesn't it? I mean, the thought that Gawain would actually be banned from having a car in the job kind of tells you they're trying to exclude local Brits. Rupert, I wonder how, you're involved with the farming industry. How do we get pressure on George Eustice to address this?
Well, I think he certainly, if he's doing his job, Nigel, should take an interest in this, because it's a fairly major subject. I think the other thing to say about a lot of the Eastern Europeans is you've got there is definitely a lack of health and safety culture in Eastern Europe. Clearly, we have got that culture here, and a lot of our people have got used to the nanny state looking after them. So I think, again, there's another reason perhaps why in the short term for a seasonal job, some people from Eastern Europe are preferable in terms of, not in terms of their ability, but just in terms of their attitude to health and safety. So I think George Eustice, he must have pressure brought to bear on him. He's got to take this seriously, because ultimately it is a very, very important issue. I think we've been shown as a result of this COVID-19 crisis, that our supply lines, not only in farming, but also in other areas, are far too extended. We're far too reliant on China.
Absolutely.
My own view is we should, and I wrote about this while I was an MEP, I believe we should be having a Buy British campaign. There is nothing better than British fruit and vegetables. And I think people will come round to a far more seasonal view of eating, which means you're eating fresh fruit that's in season rather than relying on fruit that's been shipped halfway, and vegetables that have been shipped halfway around the world that you're often eating out of season.
Yeah, and they're picked unripe.
They're picked unripe. Their preservatives are put on them.
I know.
They're stored in cold temperatures. There's a lot.
Much. I'm with you on that, Rupert, all the way. And in fact, I can tell you, during lockdown, I've been planting one or two things myself, some radishes and spring onions and things like that. So let's hope so. So look, Gwen,
I've got the lot, Nigel. I've been putting in salads, beetroot.
Good for you.
My runners are in. My broad beans are coming up.
Spirit of 1940 and all of that.
Yeah.
Gwen, are you going to reapply for that job or not?
Yes, and to be fair, the two people who wrote back to me did say, look, we're fully booked for now, but come back to us in June and ask again. But as I say, I'm waiting for a response to my video interview. But I think Rupert's correct, and what you mentioned about the supermarket pressure, that's very true. However, this is a very real issue. When I put my article out and on Twitter, I've had thousands of people responding, hundreds saying they've had a similar position. And the Buy British, Eat British regional, seasonal produce, that's going to leave a slightly funny taste in the mouth. I think we've been very sympathetic to farmers because of the situation vis-a-vis, one, the CAP, and two, the supermarkets. But that sympathy can run out.
Yeah. No, I buy that, Gwen, Rupert, thank you for joining me today. And look, I can't pretend we've answered all of the questions here, but this is a big issue. The point the season is not yet in full swing is the really important factor here. So what can you do? Well, I'll tell you what you can do. You can actually email or write to your MP and tell them to get onto George Eustace to make sure of the tens of thousands of jobs that are going to be filled over the course of the next 8 weeks or so, that as many as possible go to Brits who've fallen on tough times. Thank you.
We will make America great again.